Do you know that the quality of the products that you put out in the market, the quality of the service that you put out in the market, is a reflection of the amount of cognitive energy that your brain has generated in your work towards that project? And you also know that the ability of your work to attract the right customers, to attract the right people that will help to spread your product and to multiply its effects and its benefits for you is a direct reflection of the amount of energy and the quality of the energy that your brain generated in the course of your thinking and in the course of your working on that project. How do I know this? Well, if you stick with me throughout this video, I'm going to show you how. Hi, my name is Ugo. Welcome to this edition of Clear Thinking Digest. We're still in the Intelligence Upgrade series, where I'm exploring the strategies and the approaches that you can use to upgrade your intelligence so that you can produce better results in your work and so that you can get to the top 1% of your career. In previous videos, I've defined what intelligence is, and I've also talked about cognitive utility, which is the economics of your mind, how your mind deploys the limited resources that it has to enable it to process information better and to work on projects so that you can become more resourceful and so that you can become more productive. And so, throughout the course of cognitive utility, we've discussed a lot of things, and part of the things we've discussed, we've talked about cognitive attention. And you understand, if you've been following this series, that cognitive attention is the capacity of your mind, is the capability of your mind to focus on a particular problem, to focus on a particular activity. And with enough cognitive attention, you can generate cognitive time, which is the ability of your mind to focus on a particular problem for a sustained period of time to allow for that experience or that activity that you are engaged in over a long period of time to send enough signals, electrical signals and impulses to the cells of your brain so that they can change and morph into new shape and then to create neural pathways, which would then generate neural space, which would then create cognitive space in your mind. Because as your brain and the cells in your brain are changing in their nature, and as they are creating more neural pathways, your mind at the same time continues to generate more cognitive space. So what happens when your mind generates enough cognitive space? The nature of your mind and the nature of human brain is such that there is limited resources in your brain. There is limited resources for your body. And so your brain weighs only about 2% of the general mass of your body. Your brain weighs about 2%, but it consumes a whopping amount of 20%, which is relatively large for a brain mass of 2%. And so it consumes about 20% of the general energy that your body generates. So why is this important and why is this significant? It is significant because the very principle of cognitive utility, which is what I've been exploring so far in this series, is that your body has a limited amount of energy to spare and to use, and at the same time it has dedicated about 20% to your brain. And then the principle of cognitive utility is based on the law of least effort, which is the fact that when presented with work, people would normally follow the path of least resistance. And the reason why you're following the path of least resistance is because there is a limited amount of energy for your body to use. There is a limited amount of energy for your brain to use in problem solving. And this is why your brain works the way it does. The nature of your brain and your mind is such that it tries as much as possible to conserve energy. And it tries as much as possible to distribute energy economically so that it can have enough resources to run your body and to take care of different problems that you're attending to. How do we know this? You have two types of mind. The conscious mind, which is the place of the short-term memory, and the subconscious mind, which is the place of the long-term memory. In processing information, what your brain does is that when information comes in, your brain tries as much as possible to process that information as quick as it can and then send it to the long-term memory where it is stored and where that information can be replicated whenever you want to engage in that activity again. Over time, as you've practiced it, your brain will be able to replicate that information to engage in that activity without it having to exhaust much energy. That is the importance of your subconscious mind and your long-term memory. So your long-term memory, which is located in the place of your subconscious mind, has a vast amount of memory capacity, and the processing power is much faster and is very deep, such that it can process information in large quantities, and it can do that very fast. And so what your brain does is that whenever information is generated, whenever you are in a learning process, it tries as much as possible to automate the process, your learning process, so that it can send it to the subconscious mind where that information can be processed and generated without exerting so much amount of power, without spending so much energy. So that is why your brain thinks, so that it doesn't have to think. So it goes through this process so that it doesn't have to replicate the process every time. So you notice that the first time that you learned how to ride a bicycle or you learned how to solve a math problem, it was generally difficult in the first instance. But over time, as you continue to practice that activity, over time you mastered it. So at the point where you mastered it, you notice that whenever you want to solve that problem, you don't have to exert so much energy in doing that. So this is the mechanism of your brain to take care of information and to manage it. It's an economics that your brain develops to allow it to manage the limited amount of resources that it has. And so this is why your mind, presented with any kind of problem, will always go for the one that provides the least resistance, so that it doesn't have to exert so much cognitive energy in problem solving. Now, when you pay attention to a particular activity or experience, your mind begins to generate cognitive time. And so during this process, your brain cells begin to change. Your neurons begin to compact around that particular problem that you're solving. Your brain starts recruiting many neurons to compact together to solve that particular problem. And so as these neurons are coming together in greater compartments, they are taking more energy in doing that. And at the same time, your neurons continue to create pathways, and the pathways become larger and larger. So as they get larger, you're creating more neuronal space in your brain for that particular activity. And as this process continues, your mind at the same time begins to create cognitive space for that problem. And so what happens is that as you create more cognitive space in your brain, your mind will devote more energy to the project or the activity that has the highest amount of cognitive space. So the greater the cognitive space of an activity has in your mind, an experience has in your mind, or a project has in your mind, the greater the energy that your brain is going to devote to that problem or that activity. So why is this important? It is important because in your problem solving, you're going to have to grade the problems that are on your list to find out which one ranks most, which one will give you the best results, which one will give you the best output. When you have successfully done this, you should focus on giving more attention, more cognitive time, and more cognitive space to that problem or to that project. And so when you give more attention and more cognitive space to that problem, your brain will devote more cognitive energy to that problem. In biology, there is what is called adenosine triphosphate, and that is commonly known as ATP. This is the molecule that carries energy in your body, that ensures the distribution of energy in your body. And so what happens is that your brain takes glucose and it converts it to ATP. And it is with this ATP that your brain has generated from glucose that your body now uses in working on tasks, in working on problems. And your brain will only generate more ATP for activity that has the greater cognitive space, that is generating the more cognitive space. So ever notice that when you're working on a series of projects, let's say you're writing a book, you're preparing for an exam, and you're also preparing for a party that is coming up. Within these three tasks, based on your desires and your needs, you decide to focus, you're giving more attention. So let's say the book project, and less attention to the exam and the party. You will notice that in the final analysis that you would do much better, which means you will provide more value in the book than you will provide in your exam or for the party. So which means the cognitive space that a particular activity or experience has in your mind is directly related to the value that is going to be generated at the end. So what this means is that the value that you create in your work is directly proportional to the amount of cognitive energy that your mind has generated as a result of the cognitive space that that activity has in your mind. So if you want to produce more products, if you want to produce better products, if you want to produce better value, if you want to give better value to the world, if you want to solve problems at a level that is not comparable to anyone, at a level that is very high, you need to devote more cognitive space to that problem so that you can generate more cognitive energy to it. Another important factor to take into consideration is how well your product or your service performs in the market when you give it to people. That's the value that you give to the market, how well it does. And so if we look at the quality of your product, if you look at the quality of your service, we can theoretically determine how much energy and the quality of time and energy that you have devoted to that work just by looking at the quality of your product or your service, or by looking at how it's performing in the market. So how do we determine this? How do we know this? That is known because the ability of your product or your service to attract energy that will help to multiply the effects of your value in the market is determined by how much energy that your brain has generated whilst you're working on the project. So let's paint a vivid analogy. So take Thomas Edison as he was working on the problem of the light bulb. If Edison had devoted about 15,000 hours or 13,000 hours to working on the problem of the light bulb, and in the course of doing that, he paid, of course, enormous attention, which led to giving more cognitive time to that project. And as a result of that, his mind created more cognitive space for that particular project. Of course, which now leads to him generating more cognitive energy for that project. You could see that the final product that he produced, which is the light bulb, becomes a manifestation of the amount of energy, the amount of time, and the amount of space that he devoted to that particular project. So how do we know that? When he finally produced the final product, which is the light bulb, the results of the light bulb was so spectacular, was so magnificent, that the problem that it solved was very vital to the market, that other people now came in in form of agents, in form of marketers, in form of buyers. All these people now came together with their own energy to help multiply the effects of the value he had generated. Value in itself is a form of energy. It's a form of energy that is generated from within. The first point of value comes from within. It comes from you. You're the person that is producing the value. And so the value that you're producing, that you're giving to the market, is a direct conversion of your cognitive energy. The energy that is within you is a direct conversion of that energy. And so what value does is to help solve the friction in the operation of life. And so as life form engages in its processing of information, occasionally life forms witness operational friction. And so this friction could come in form of hunger. It could come in form of lack of access to resource. When this friction is generated, value is anything that comes in to resolve that friction. And so it's another form of energy that comes in to take care of that friction. And so this form of energy can only be generated when enough cognitive time and enough cognitive space have been devoted in the articulation of that problem, which leads to your mind generating enough cognitive attention in attending to that problem. So what you do when you produce value is that you're taking the cognitive energy that you have within you and you're converting it to a value that can be given to the market. So the quality of the value that you give to the market is directly dependent on the amount of time, the size of cognitive space, and the amount of cognitive energy that you have devoted to that problem that you wish to solve. And when you have done this, the quality and the quantity of the cognitive energy that you have generated will determine the ability of your value to attract energy from people, which could come in form of marketers, which could come in form of salespeople, which could come in form of customers, who will now take that your product and multiply its effects in the world, ensuring that your product or your service gets to the different corners of the world and saturates the market. So if you want to produce a value that is going to have a great effect in the market, then you understand that you have to devote enough cognitive attention, which will lead to enough cognitive time, changing the cells and creating this cognitive space that will generate enough cognitive energy with which you can use to produce the value that is going to be useful to the market. So this is my message for you today. Thanks for watching this edition of Clear Thinking Digest. This is the Intelligence Upgrade series. In subsequent videos that will be coming, I'm going to be discussing and exploring more cognitive strategies, more skills and mindsets that you can deploy that will help you in problem solving, to make better decisions in your career, and to help you to process information better and faster so that you can get the results that will take you to the 1% of your career. If you've seen this video on YouTube, please, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you can get more videos, so that you can get notifications whenever they drop. And if you're seeing this video on Facebook, I encourage you to like my page and to hit the notification buttons so that you can get them whenever they drop every week. Thanks so much for joining me in this edition of Clear Thinking Digest, and I'll see you next week.